Welcome to this episode of the NeuFit Undercurrent Podcast. I am very excited today to bring you my friend Frank Mocerino, who I actually knew a little bit, back in high school through friends of friends. Our younger sisters, funny enough, actually were friends. They were in the same grade. He was a year ahead of me. So we each went on separate paths, and then we were at a physical therapy conference a couple of months ago, and I saw him speaking. He actually was on stage speaking right after me. And I saw him. I was like, gosh, that guy looks so familiar. What is it? What is it? We finally connected the dots that we had gone to high school together and we were 1 year apart, had a lot of mutual friends. And Frank is not a clinician. I'll let you tell you about, sorry, I'll let him tell you about his business, but he has a business, and in that business, he's used it as a wonderful vehicle for providing excellent customer service and learning a lot about creating a culture of customer service, surprising and delighting customers, creating raving fans. And so even though his business is different, he was at this conference teaching physical therapy practice owners how to do the same for their patients and to create raving fans in their business. And I just thought the material was so wonderful. I was really excited to invite him to join us here and share some of his perspective on how he does this in his business, and of course, which lessons can extrapolate to all of us here in NeuFit Nation. So Frank, thank you so much for joining us.
Garrett, it's a pleasure to be here. And it was fun to reconnect because I loved that we went to high school together and then were able to reconnect after so many years. So yeah,
That's right.
It's great to be here, Garrett. Thanks for having me.
Heck yeah, heck yeah. So can you just tell everybody who's listening first a bit of an introduction about yourself? Tell us about the Ohm Store and your business and a little bit of background so we can understand where you're coming from.
Yeah, totally. I'd be happy to. So my sister and I co-founded the Ohm Store in 2015. And what we do at the Ohm Store is we partner with about 250 craftsmen and artisans in primarily Nepal, but also India. And we bring handmade brass and bronze Tibetan singing bowls to the world. So if you've never heard of a Tibetan singing bowl, it is again, brass or bronze bowl, anywhere from 3 to 15 inches in diameter. And it makes a gong noise where you can strike it on the side. You can also play it around the rim. And they are created specifically to be analog binaural beats, meaning they help entrain your brain waves to calmer states of mind. So that is what we do, and we have been doing since 2015. And a little bit about what led both Nikki and I into this pursuit is we both experienced some and different measures of chronic illness. I was diagnosed with ulcerative colitis when I was a senior in college in 2007. I very quickly failed all of the immunosuppressant and steroid medications and ended up having a total colectomy in 2008. And then about 3 months after that, I started getting pains all over my body. And really, to cut to the heart of the matter, after a period of years of experiencing all sorts of things from bowel issues to really, really horrible arthritic conditions that led me bedridden, I uncovered that I had chronic Lyme disease. And through the process of healing from chronic Lyme disease, what I learned was that healing in general, at least for me, was not only about the physical. It was about the physical, the emotional, and the spiritual, ultimately about bringing the nervous system and the physical body integrated into a way where they were in balance. So through the healing process, we pursued all sorts of different modalities, right? Everything from traditional Western medicine to the most alternative things that you can imagine. And part of what we dove deeply into was meditation and sound. And we decided to see if we could bring a little bit of that to the world, not just the sound, but the ethos that we learned. And that's what we do at the Ohm Store. And that's a little bit about how we ended up doing that.
That's awesome. Thanks for sharing that. And it's I'm just impressed. Want to acknowledge not only how you've been able to turn your own challenges into opportunities, but also to create an operation like that, to be able to connect with hundreds of craftsmen in Asia and bring their work here. And I know you do it in a way where, they're paid well for their work, and it's a very collaborative, mutually beneficial sort of arrangement where I just, really like what you're doing there. I appreciate you sharing that too, so everyone can understand, at least know that you have a very legitimate, successful business, and aren't just spouting these things from the ivory tower theoretically. These are, you are really taking care of many, many, many customers, and certainly more than we have at our clinic. In terms of volume, doing e-commerce and stuff like that, you have even more customers, different types of interactions. But I think a lot of the lessons are going to be the same here. So, broadly speaking, open-ended, what to you really jumps out when we say customer service? What are some of the big themes or the biggest top of mind concepts?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing that comes to mind here is kind of a tagline that I think of nearly every day. And it's really kind of rooted in the way that my dad approached dealing with customers growing up. He didn't have his own business, but he was in sales. And I remember him instilling an ethos in me. And so the way that I distill this ethos is, if you have ever accepted someone's money, then you have a moral obligation to them. So that is the way that I approach dealing with customers and dealing with customer service, is that I don't think of it as a transactional relationship. I think of it as a transformative relationship where now I am indebted to this person, whether they've spent $30 with me or $3,000 with me. I believe that I owe them the world. And the philosophy that we utilize is essentially, we have a 100% satisfaction promise no matter what, with no limit of time on that. And it didn't come about because of logic, right? It came about because when we started the business, my sister Nikki was actually really inspired by Nordstrom's. And she always told me what it was like to do business with Nordstrom. She would rave about the fact that you could buy something, take the tags off of it, wear it maybe a couple of times, throw it in the back of your closet, forget about it, take it back to a Nordstrom's 5 years later and get a full refund for it with no hassle. And I thought, that is the sort of company that I want to be. When someone chooses to invest their money with me, I want to be the person that can be counted on to take care of them no matter what. And if I don't take care of them, then they deserve to have all of the money back, because I haven't lived up to the obligation that comes into place when taking money. And frankly, I think that in e-commerce in particular, it's too easy to create a fence around yourself and your business of policies and procedures, right? You have 7 days to check out the product, but then after that, you can never return it no matter what. Or you have 30 days to check out the product, and after that, right, you can't return it no matter what. I want someone to feel totally comfortable ordering from me and know that I've got their back no matter what. And that's kind of the ethos that we have in dealing with people, is that we don't necessarily want to do things that scale. We want to be highly relational, highly communicative, and we want to do things that most other people don't do because they don't scale.
It's interesting when you say that. I think some people, as you were talking, then especially when you say, like, talk about scaling, I think some people listening to that may be thinking, well, that's great, but what about the numbers? Like, are people just going to be asking for refunds? I'm going to be losing money and things like that. And one point I'd like to just kind of add on to what you said is that what really jumps out at me when I'm hearing you speak is that what you're doing is building goodwill. And I believe that nothing compounds faster than goodwill, and the monetary value of that. If you want to talk conceptually, I think, you having a long-term perspective, doing the right thing, like you said, taking care of people, living out that moral obligation that you have to them. I mean, conceptually, I think we all can sense that that's the right thing to do, and that's going to do well in the long run. But if anyone has resistance around, okay, well, show me the numbers. How is that going to work? I have to run a business here. I have to keep the lights on. I think that you actually can put it into financial terms too, because goodwill, having goodwill in the marketplace can create influence for PT practice owners if they're known as the go-to person in their city. And if people are just so delighted by their experience there, they're going to refer. And the amount of referrals, that the compounding effect of that is going to be worth way more than one person who may ask for a refund here and there or something like that too. So I just want to kind of touch on that I don't think it's necessarily like pie in the sky or idealistic. I think if you put numbers to it, it actually can make sense mathematically as well.
That's right. And I mean, to give people a sense of the numbers, again, we're dealing with with physical items that people are buying rather than PT owners dealing with like human beings, right? That are in the practice. But to give people a sense of what we're talking about, the generally the return rate, or the acceptable return rate in the e-commerce business that's considered good, is about 1% or less, right? But apparel companies, just to give people like a sense of the broad spectrum of this, an apparel company that does business on e-commerce, right? They sell shirts, they sell shoes, they sell something like that. They experience return rates of up to 30%, right? So like one is good, but like different industries will range up to 30% return rates. The Ohm Store has introduced 500,000 people to their very first singing bowl. And we've experienced a return rate over the last 8 years of right about 1%. And that is with none of those fences around our return policy, meaning someone could have bought from us 3 years ago, emailed me this morning and said, you know what, I bought this thing, but now I don't really like it, or I don't know how to use it, or I stuck it in the closet and I never did anything with it. Can I have my money back? We would say yes, right? So it's like a cumulative approach where I'm not just looking to be deal with people in a satisfactory way over the last 30 days because I'm afraid that they're going to return the thing and they only have 30 days. I am waking up every day and still protecting my customers from 7 years ago or 8 years ago. So that gives people a sense of the numbers. And again, like, I can explain things logically, but Garrett, as you probably remember from me speaking at the conference, I'm dealing in a very emotional way with people, where my feeling on this is, if you have a policy like this where you're 100% customer forward, and then all of a sudden everyone starts asking for their money back, you have a problem in your business, right? That goes beyond having a guarantee, right? Like if you all of a sudden now have this like promise where people can get their money back, and everyone starts coming to you, and you all of a sudden have an unacceptable rate of refunds that's going on, you don't need to solve the problem of having a better policy. You need to solve the problem of, why the heck does everyone want a refund? And what can you do to serve your people better and to produce better outcomes and better experiences for your patients or customers?
Yes, very, very well said. I appreciate that perspective. I think that's great. You mentioned how Nordstrom was one of the role models
Yeah.
there. I know you have a few other examples of model companies or other experiences that demonstrate this sort of ethos, customer service ethos that you're describing. Can you share a few other examples as well?
Yeah. And actually, before I share other examples, I want to share the full Nordstrom tire story that I shared at this conference where we reconnected, because
Yes,
uh,
please. That's
I,
right.
and
That's right.
again, I realize that we're dealing with like a lot of business owners here, right? And business owners, I am one of you, and I hear you, that it has become, every single year it is becoming more challenging to acquire customers or to acquire patients, and it's getting more expensive to do so via traditional channels. So anything that you can do to create asymmetric returns is where I'm currently looking for the opportunities, right? Like, I don't want to, like, of course, like if we're advertising for new patients and we're doing free consults on like Facebook, we want to put in $1 and eventually get $2 out, right? That might be considered good in traditional advertising models. But I want to do something where I do something one time and then it produces results for me for several years in asymmetric ways. And the Nordstrom tire story speaks really, really well to that, where if you were dealing with this on like a case by case basis, you may look at this story as I tell it and say, that doesn't check out. Like if we made that the policy, then we might go out of business. But once you hear the story, you'll see like why it was so important. So the exact details escape me a little bit, but essentially we're dealing with a Nordstrom's in Alaska. I believe it's the Fairbanks, Alaska Nordstrom's in the late 70s. And a dude comes in and he rolls a tire into the Nordstrom, right? And he's like, I'm here to return this tire. And the Nordstrom guy is like, what do you mean? And he's like, well, I'm here to return this tire. So, right, the details on this are there used to be a Sears Roebuck in place of this Nordstrom. And then the Sears went out of business or changed locations, and now Nordstrom is inhabiting the same building. But the guy just rolls the tire in anyway. And what happened, and this is a true story, by the way, right? Because I can already like feel people being like, well, didn't the guy with the tire like see that it was a different store? I don't know what the guy with the tire did, but this is a real story, and I'm welcoming you to Google it like after you're listening to this podcast. So the guy rolls in with the tire, and ultimately the Nordstrom guy calls up like a tire distributor and says, okay, I've got this guy here with a set of tires. What do you think the value of these tires is? So he figures out the value of the tires and he refunds this guy for the tires that he bought from the Sears Roebuck that used to inhabit the building that Nordstrom now inhabits. So this is something that happened relatively like 50 years ago or something, but it is a story that has been being told, right? Like I was born in 1985 and this happened before I was born. And now here I am in 2023 telling this story, right? 50 years or so, 40, 50 years after it happened. And the reason that I'm sharing with you, and I shared with you right before this, the idea of asymmetric returns is, right, maybe let's say that Nordstrom's lost, and I'm doing air quotes for those of you not listening or not watching this, but maybe just listening to it. Maybe Nordstrom lost $600 in 1977 or whenever this happened. But realistically, what Nordstrom did was they put $600 into a marketing vehicle that has now paid off for them for more than 50 years and hundreds of millions of dollars of sales. And people like me who have no affiliation with Nordstrom telling the story because it's such an inspiring thing for business owners to understand. So that is like one particular story that, again, is real and always gets me so excited to share with people because it's not necessarily logical. But what that Nordstrom employee was trained to do is to solve the problems of people and to think outside of policies and procedures and get to the real heart of the matter, which is your job is to solve people's problems, human being people's problems, right? The man that rolled the tire into the story, he wasn't like a number to this particular sales associate. He was a human being standing right in front of him, and that Nordstrom's associate wanted to solve that person's problem, and he did it. And again, that's like it's an ethos that is inspiring to me, and I hope is inspiring to other business owners as well, right? Because it's not necessarily something that you're going to read in a how to market or how to set up systems and processes for your business book.
But if you ignore the details, I mean, a tire in a clothing store, may seem goofy or whatever, but if you ignore the detail and you just say like, okay, let's zoom out and say, if I could spend $600 for my business to have, that amount of goodwill, have people still talking about me, that like, you're right. It's a great example of an asymmetric risk or asymmetric reward type of situation there. So I think that's a great example. Thank you for sharing that. I know you have one or two more too that I think will help open our minds. Then we can talk, of course, how to tie it back into PT practice and some of our things there. But that's a good one because it's so Surprising, right? Like
Yeah,
imagine being in a Nordstrom and seeing that.
it's really quite insane. And we've had similar challenges, actually, bizarrely like that, where throughout the holidays, we had the opportunity to serve people in this way. Like we recently switched warehouses, and the warehouse mixed up some of our products with other people's products. So people literally got like bottles of pills, when they ordered a singing bowl from us. And we were like, well, obviously no need to like send that back to us, but here's the correct product for you, and then here's like a refund on the product that you actually paid for, because that was crazy, right? So just like crazy things happen, and there's always an opportunity in there. But let me tell the story about Tony Hsieh, who is the CEO of Zappos. So Zappos is an online shoe retailer. And Tony Hsieh was at a conference, and there were several executives kind of after hours, just like sitting around talking, and they were hungry. They wanted to get food. They were there post conference, so they had probably been drinking a little bit. And here's the gang like sitting in the room, and room service happens to be closed. So Tony Hsieh, by the way, has famously created a customer service forward approach to Zappos. Zappos is, again, an online shoe retailer. It's important. They're an online shoe retailer. That's what they do. So Tony Hsieh, right, and these executives are sitting around late at night, room service is closed, and Tony Hsieh kind of almost jokingly says, well, why don't you call the Zappos customer service and see what they can do for us? So one of the executive calls the online shoe retailer's customer service at like 11 p.m. at night, right after a hotel's room service was actually closed. And they said, we're looking for food. We are here at a conference. The executive did not mention that he was there with like the CEO of the company. He's just saying, we need food, and we understand that you guys do customer service. So here's the deal. We want food. And at first, the customer service representative is kind of like, what? And then recovers and says, hold on a moment. And then moments later, kind of like come back, trades the information, ends up getting these guys pizzas delivered to their room. And another one of the examples of the totally inspiring story where this person, this customer service associate, their job description was not help people buy shoes. Their job description was something akin to treat people as individual human beings that have individualized problems and help solve them for them while surprising and delighting them. So a lot of what I spoke about at this conference, and what is important for me to communicate, is that if business owners are listening, you can't be everywhere. So you have, as a business owner, almost selfishly would do these sorts of things because it's your business. But the challenge to all of this is that you have to instill this sort of ethos in the people that are actually out there on the front lines, interacting with your customers and your patients on a day-to-day basis, right? So for me, it's almost like it's self-serving for me to have these sorts of policies in place, because I want to cover my butt, right? But for my customer service team or any other team members that I have that are out there interacting with customers, ultimately this is their job, right? And they could get a new job if they wanted to, right? They haven't invested like 8 years into this. They're not living and dying for whatever the mission is, unless you instill the ethos in them. So that's, I think, an important and relevant point to note, is that in the stories here, it's not the founder of Nordstrom and it's not the founder of Zappos, right, like executing on these strategies. It's frontline team members who have been empowered to go beyond policies and procedures and really solve people's human problems.
That's a great point, and there's a good quote that I shared in one of our team meetings recently that everyone got a kick out of. I think it's from Peter Drucker, the famous management author and business consulting expert. The quote was, "Culture eats strategy for breakfast," and
Yeah.
I think that really speaks to, if you can infuse that in the in the culture, it's like everyone is of one mind, and
Yeah,
it's the right mind, the good, the good type that you want to be.
yeah,
And it's not that everyone is robotic by any means. It's that we're using the same values and essentially guidelines to make decisions, to act in a way that's congruent with who we choose to be in the world.
yeah,
So
that's right.
I think that's a great point. And just yeah, want to underscore that. I'm glad you brought that up about how you, if you can infuse that into your culture, that will scale. So it's not like we have to be thinking as business owners like this is awesome, but I'm already doing so many things. Like how can I do, add in all these things to take care of every single customer? Obviously you can't, right? It's got to scale. So yeah, that's a great point.
That's right. Yeah, and it goes be right. That's like it's where like the day-to-day management of an operational company where the rubber meets the road, right? Where policies and procedures are important, right? Because they help give people direction and create repeatable experiences. But like you said, I love that Peter Drucker's quote. You can create a culture that really instills what you actually want the outcomes of the policies and procedures to be, right? Policies and procedures tell you how, but they don't tell you why. And the culture of a company and the ethos instilled by its leaders can distill that why, that gives life and breathes air into the policies and procedures. Like this is what we are really trying to do.
That's awesome. And going back to that quote, I think we can look at both culture and strategy as either competing or complementary influences that determine why. Like, if we have a strategy for our business, of course, that's going to inform what our goals are for the week, which is going to inform our activities in a day, right? So it's going to influence what we do. Our culture also is going to influence what we do on a day-to-day basis. And so those two can be competing or complementary influences. But if you have a strong culture, that's going to really, I think, infuse the day-to-day more strongly than having, an annual and quarterly goal. Those are important. That helps direct the ship. But how you are on the ship, right? That's the culture, and
That's
that
right.
influences how well you do or don't work together to solve problems, and how well you do or don't take care of your customers. All these things that we're talking about. But I think that's
That's right.
just an interesting conceptual way to think about it. And I'll kick it back over to you to finish that, and also perhaps share another story too. I feel like you told me you had one more too, right?
Well, I think that like something I wanted to share, I'm going to go beyond the story because I actually
Ooh,
have
bonus.
experiences, right? These are bonus experiences that we have where the rubber has met the road in the last 7 days that I want to share with you. And I actually didn't plan in advance to share this. But what is an example of? It's an example of solving people's real problems. And it's example of what happens when you make a choice to be highly relational as a company. Because scale really is one of the buzzwords that people who are running companies or managing companies constantly talk about. But something that I've got circled in like every notebook that I have, and it's plastered all over my walls, is to be highly relational. And this relates to like, I like to issue challenges to people. So for those listening, social media is a quagmire for many, right? Many practice owners, like no one essentially who is running a business went to school to learn how to interact with social media. It's something that we've all been discovering together since it really became popular, like right in the last 10 years or so. And the way that I have traditionally approached social media has actually been a traditional way of approaching social media, where it was my desire to create content, right? A post or whatever it's going to be, a video, something written. And then my aim was actually to have one to many, right? Like I wanted to create content one time and have hundreds and thousands of people view and consume that content and then come flooding into my business because of how brilliant the content that my company created was, right? Right. That's like the promise of social media. But think deeply about what the words are that we use to describe these platforms like Facebook, like Instagram, whatever. Social media. It is a media platform designed where you can actually have social interactions with people. And people, strangers, are primed to interact with you, right? Like the opportunity is this: if you're a business owner and you went out into a crowded downtown city like Austin or Chicago, and you just started going up to people and like, hey, I'm Garrett, I'm the NeuFit guy. I'm Garrett, I'm the NeuFit guy. I'm Frank, I'm the Ohm Store guy, right? Like, you don't have that opportunity in the streets in the same way that you have on social media, because in the streets, in real life, people would, first off, you don't have the ability to like talk to as many people as possible. But it's almost an insane proposition, right? I saw Garrett smile as I said that. So what I tested in the last 7 days was being highly relational and using a media platform to be social. So I would spend, right? Like we have people, like I have folks that are really great at creating content in social media. That's not me. But what I believe my strong suit is in business is being highly relational and social with our customers and solving what they really want. So on our Instagram account, for example, if all of you have Instagram accounts, you probably notice like there's dozens, if not hundreds of people liking the posts that you created, and dozens, if not hundreds of people like following and unfollowing you on a daily and weekly basis. And it is almost too much to process, like the transactional nature of what's going on in Instagram. So the experiment that I ran was this: for about a week, I'm just going to spend an hour every day actually messaging the people that have liked and commented on the posts and that have followed us. And for the followers, for example, because I'm in the business of making handmade Tibetan singing bowls in partnership with artisans in Nepal and India. So I would reach out to somebody that followed us with a simple message like, hey, I really appreciated that you followed us. I can tell, right? Or something to the, again, I don't remember the exact message, but it was something like, I appreciated it. And I didn't want to just gloss over the fact that you trusted me to show up in your feed now. And I wanted to let you know that I'm here to support you. Are singing bowls already something that you're using in your day-to-day life, or did you follow our account because you're interested and want to learn more? And that was the process that I had for people who had just followed us. For people who had actually already engaged with our content, they liked or commented on something, I actually took their information, looked up, right, if I could find their name and email address in our system, and seeing are they on our email list? Did they interact with us in any other ways? Have they purchased anything? And then sent them custom messages. Some instances I found out that people purchased. And I said, oh my gosh, I really appreciate that you purchased this particular bowl. And I'm so thankful that you're here engaging with us on social media. So what I was able to do in about an hour a day is forge real relationships with like 100 to 200 people. And right, notice I didn't say like 100,000 to 200,000 people, because ultimately I'm messaging individual people. I'm not blasting them with copy paste stuff. I'm not sending this to an email list of like 200,000 people. I'm talking with actual human beings. And then if they respond to me, I'm looking at their profile and I'm seeing like, what is this person up to that I can see visibly here? Obviously, it's not telling me their life story, but there's something that they want to know about the world that they're putting on social media. And I interacted with people and asked them, like, why did you follow us? What was going on for you that made it relevant to follow us? And again, I wanted to bring this home in terms of like business owner metrics. There's a metric that is now what we call our God metric in our business. It's contribution margin. So it essentially is the cost of goods and services delivered, subtracting advertising costs and any other variable costs, and it gives you contribution margin. So it's a more powerful, in my experience, metric for business owners, particularly in the e-commerce space, because it says, this is what it costs to deliver your products and services, everything baked into it. what it costs to make them for me in Nepal and India, what it costs to bring them to the United States, what it costs to send them to our customers, what it costs in credit card processing fees, and then what it costs to advertise, right? And then everything that shakes out below that is called contribution margin. So contribution margin is the margin, the number that matters to business owners, right? Even beyond profit, because it's a number that you can control. What I saw in the last 7 days is that our contribution margin, the gross number, skyrocketed, because here I was not paying a single dollar for advertising, not paying a single dollar for some sort of like fancy marketing campaign. What I was doing was sitting down at my computer and building a relationship one at a time by being curious about people who were essentially falling into my lap. So, right, the ethos here is like, it is a beautiful gift that people fall into your lap by following you or commenting or liking something that you've put out on social media. And rather, this is a challenge, rather than thinking about more ways to blast your message out to a million people, think about how you can empower, right? Because I can't do this forever. I'm eventually going to empower a team owner, but I can build relationships one at a time with people and actually deliver customer service to them in advance of them buying a product, which I'm suspecting is going to drastically increase their loyalty to the brand, their lifetime value of the customers, right? So all of the metrics that I'm ultimately going for, I can get there in a way by being a good person, right? And like doing the things that you know you could do, but you gloss over them because there's nothing sexy about sitting there and messaging individual people and seeing what they have to say, why they followed you, right? And you think about it from like a PT practice owner perspective. Why did you follow me on social media? Are you, right? Are you looking to rehabilitate something? Are you looking for performance enhancement and want to get better at, right? It's like you could start a conversation with people that will exponentially increase and asymmetrically offer you an opportunity to serve more people just by being curious with them and looking to solve the problem that they might have. So
That's
that
a
was the
great.
off script thing.
Oh yeah, that's great. And I really like that you're that's I don't even know if I've ever thought about it that deeply. It's okay, social media. Let's look at what the words are. Yeah. Just because it's on some tech platform, it doesn't mean that, the rules of interpersonal social engagement go away, right? And so
Yeah.
still, treating people like humans and engaging in that way, I think is awesome. And then, like you talk about for your business and, 100,000 order of magnitude customers, multiples of that, that may not scale to everybody, but it made a difference in your contribution margin already. And you can have some team leaders on your team. Oh, sorry, I hit my microphone there. You can have some team leaders on your team, do that as well once you kind of figure out how to do it. And if they can, just like the Nordstrom frontline employee taking care of the person's tires, if people on your team can take care of your customers in the same way, of course that can scale. But even at the scale that you're doing, an hour a day for a week, that's enough to not only move the needle for your business, but for a local PT clinic. I mean, imagine what 5 or 10 new patients a week would do, because for most clinics that would allow them to fill up a brand new therapist and start to hire another one or something. I mean, that
Yeah.
can move the needle as a ratio of the total business probably even more significantly. So that's a great idea. I really like that. And then that's also a good segue into talking about ways to really bring this home for practice owners as well. So I think that's one. I mean, we've got a couple themes, of course, treating people like humans, understanding that when we take somebody's money, we have a moral obligation to do right by them. And I think that's a good theme. That's a good decision-making guideline. And then, this is a good idea here of how to actually take that concept and apply it where the rubber meets the road, as you said. Anything else in terms of either strategies or tactics that jump out at you? Of course, people may be thinking of their own things, but knowing what you know about our industry and physical therapy or chiropractic practice, local businesses, what are some other ways to kind of bring these home to NeuFit Nation, to the practitioners who are serving their patients and clients in local markets?
Yeah, I mean the best. So for those of you who remember the beginning of this conversation, I kind of like lightly touched on the fact that I had Lyme disease and rehabilitated from that. Before the diagnosis, I probably went through like 7 different physical therapy practitioners because at the time no one knew what was going on with me. So they would say, "Oh, you probably just have an SI issue. Go, physical course of physical therapy is what you need." So I've actually experienced quite a lot of physical therapy. And the best relationship and the most money and time that I ever invested with a physical therapist was a guy. He had a rule where he would never see multiple patients at the same time. So I don't want to call out anybody, but I've had like a lot of experiences in physical therapy, and most of them, like once it was beyond my first couple of visits, they put me on the table and they're just like, "Okay, do the thing, do your exercises," and then they walked away. Um, Again, it's a scalable business practice, but I didn't like it. So the gentleman that I worked with was named Paul, and Paul had a philosophy that he was going to just be one patient at a time, no matter what, and he would actually be there with me, counting me down in the exercises or doing a little bit of like manual pressure or manual therapy on me as I was working through different ranges of motion. And I remember Paul is the reason that I had the courage to go snowboarding when I was rehabilitating these things for the first time ever. Right. And he gave me some sage advice. He's like, "Don't go black diamond it, Frank, right? Go on the bunny hills, right? Like stay in a place where you're going to be totally safe, even if you fall down. But like, yeah, heck yeah, you should go and do it." Because I came to him with reservations, looking for him to give me a reason of why I shouldn't do it. So he was the reason that I went snowboarding. He was the reason that I began rock climbing again. We were friends, but he gave me permission to go out there and use the concept of movement as medicine, and spent time relating to me as a person one on one, right? For those like 30 to 45 minutes, 2 days a week for probably like a year. So that's just like an anecdote that I wanted to share. And I think I am not a financial expert, but my general understanding is that as we enter 2023, we might be experiencing a different economic paradigm this year, right? Where consumers and patients may be spending a little bit of less money. Um, I'm always operating from the perspective of, well, let's operate as if that's going to happen, but then be happy if it doesn't happen. But I want to be prepared. And part of my preparation is doing these highly relational things that don't actually cost large amounts of money, because you already have team members in place that can do everything that I've talked about. You have team members in place that could spend an hour, right, like messaging people and developing relationships on social media. You already have therapists in place who can spend time relating in a one-to-one basis with the patients that are already on the table. So I think a big takeaway is like, you already have patients and they are your gold. They're the ones that are already paying you money to produce outcomes that they desire. You can invest heavily in them. And when I say invest heavily in them, you've already acquired to them. You've already acquired them as patients, drive outcomes for them and develop real relationships with them, and think about how you can create asymmetric value for them in their life by encouraging them to go out and do the things that really matter to them, like give them the courage to go snowboarding if they can do it, right? If their like current physical status is such that that would be safe for them to do, or they can go rock climbing, or encourage the people that are already working with you to think about, what is the opportunity for me to surprise, to delight, to serve the people that are in front of me, or to serve people that I could potentially serve in a way that would transform their life.
That's awesome. If people show up to work that day with that thought in mind, right? That's culture over
That's
strategy.
right.
If people show up with that thought in their mind, that is going to just naturally lead to wonderful things. So I think that's great. I really appreciate you coming on and sharing that perspective. Before we wrap up here, let me ask you real quickly. Can you share with everybody, how was your experience the first time you got to use the newbie?
It was insanely amazing, right? So for those of you who can't see me, right? Because of the inflammation that I experienced as a result of blah, 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 all the things that I've mentioned several times now, I had an osteophyte grow across two of my vertebrae. So I have a really limited, like, right, like I have a clenching effect in like my mid thoracic spine where it's really tightly guarded. And a way to visualize that is imagine someone doing like the cat camel or the cat cow, like yoga pose with their back up and down. I can hardly do that. So after I used the newbie, right, for how long did we do it, Garrett?
10 minutes or so it was at the booth at that conference.
Yeah, that's right. Like instantly, like what I remember, Garrett could tell you more about the range of motion that I recovered, but what I remember is the sensation of the guarding that I constantly experience, which I have to like roll on like tennis balls and lacrosse balls every day to relax. I can remember an instant relaxation of that guarding sensation that I've got around that osteophyte in my mid spine. So it was wild.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that.
Got
We'll
it,
have to,
man.
now that you're down here in the Austin area, of course we'll do some more.
I would love that.
And as we wrap up here, can you let people know where to find you on social media? Maybe they'll follow you to see if they get a personalized message. But you
I
can,
I would welcome
on
that.
social media and spell out Ohm Store. It's OHM,
That's
the Ohm Store dot co, right?
That's right. Yeah. So on Instagram, we are the Ohm Store, TheOhmStore, the Ohm Store on Instagram. And then our website is the Ohm Store, ohmstore.co. So that's where you can find us. And I'd welcome, if you're interested in sound or really interested in anything that I've said, you can email me personally at frank@theohmstore.co. And then if you're interested in like sound and singing bowls, you can connect with us on Instagram. You can connect with us through our website. You can email our customer service at hello@theohmstore.co. And, see if I'm putting my money where my mouth is. But I would welcome the opportunity to introduce any of you to a singing bowl or just chat if you want to.
Awesome. And I have gotten, for my wife Brianna, I got a singing bowl as a gift a few years ago, and I've used it too. I love it. It's really, really wonderful. So thank you for coming on and sharing this and for the work that you're doing. I mean, it's a really an inspirational example. And I think that all of us listening who may be in a different business can see the themes and find ways to apply those to improve our own businesses and communities and teams and customer experiences. So Frank, I so appreciate you coming on. Everybody
Yeah, this was
listening,
fun.
NeuFit Nation, thank you. You're the best. And we'll see you on the next episode of the Undercurrent Podcast.
Bye, everyone.